No way this just happened, but unfortunately, the Boston Celtics meet their match here in the Summer League and run into a tough team in the Miami Heat where they fall in short and lose their first game here in Vegas. But with all that being said, there were some standout performances and even some fun, energetic plays that we saw break out through these guys that can make an impact, not only for the main Celtics, but also for some guys competing to be in Joe Mazzulla's roster on this Boston Celtics team. So what does that ultimately mean for the Celtics fans here that missed this game? Well, we're going to be breaking down and diving into all of it and more on this episode of Celtics Digest. I am Bruce Veliz, and I appreciate all your guys' love and support. Unfortunately, I was able to cover the last game yesterday because I went to the Big 3 over in Boston, which was a fantastic time in itself. And even though the Celtics were able to come out victorious in Sunday's performance, here on Monday, unfortunately, they did fall short. But we will have all the latest in breaking down this game here on this episode. So without further ado, let's dive into it and let's explore who really stood out for this Boston Celtics team, as it was a wild game back and forth with the Heat really coming out guns a-blazing. Felt like their dark magic was once again striking versus the Celtics team where they were making every shot, and the Celtics were down here in halftime by 13, and with the Heat going on some closing runs to end the first and second quarter, it looked like this was going to be a difficult game for the Boston Celtics. And even though they did lose 100-96, they were able to bring it back and even have leads in the fourth quarter. With some unfortunate turnover issues, they were able to lose control of that lead and ultimately lose this game as the Heat outshot them. But it was a very interesting, wild ride. A game that felt like it took a little bit longer than expected, was at least entertaining for us Celtics fans. And when looking at this stat sheet, there's a lot to really talk about because a lot of stuff happened, not only with guys competing for those main roster spots like I mentioned, but guys also competing for the Boston roster spots, as there's been some rotational players or guys that could be competing for rotational spots here for the Celtics on this Summer League team. So without further ado, let's dive into it, and let's start it off and start speaking about the one guy that probably was not the biggest story, but the biggest story of the first half, which was Jordan Walsh, who has been playing absolutely fantastic as this veteran for this Boston Celtics team. Once again, looking more controlled, more relaxed out there on the perimeter there, kind of being more relaxed, but also playing a solid job as that wing defender. He had a nice little play where he did a nice little Euro step in the first half, got a nice little finish, had a little nice jolt with a guy in Eric Stevenson, which was a little bit funny there, and had a little instigation on top, which we were loving. But then, unfortunately, the next possession, Jordan Walsh brings up the ball, kind of dribbling it, playing defense on Pelle Larsson, and they get in a little shoving match, and he is ejected. So following a great performance from Jordan Walsh once again here, not only on the offensive side, but the defensive side, helping control this Celtics team and kind of lead it, the Celtics did lose that kind of key defensive piece, which, once again, maybe kind of diving in and looking back at this, could really retrospectively could have helped them out, but it's a-okay for the Celtics that it is just Summer League. Jordan Walsh kind of getting into it, kind of showing that fighting style, and I think Joe Mazzulla is going to really like to see that energy brought out of him, similar to how he looks at it. I thought he was going to look at a guy in Hugo Gonzalez in our previous Summer League video. But like I said, Jordan Walsh, a little bit of an interesting game with him getting ejected, but so far as this veteran has looked pretty solid for this Celtics team on both sides of the floor. Next, I want to talk about the guy that's kind of next in line, which is Baylor Scheierman, as today I think was his best game overall for the Boston Celtics in this Summer League. Like I mentioned, was unable to catch the game yesterday live, but Baylor Scheierman in this game, even though his shooting numbers, if you look at the stats, obviously 4 for 12 or 13 from three-point range, it does take a little bit of opportunities for for Baylor Scheierman, obviously, to kind of let loose in this game. It at least shows he has that confidence. He has that fire range. He's ready to kind of strive to hit those threes. And there were multiple instances where some of them kind of rolled out, right? There was that instance where Hugo and Suga dove on the floor for that loose ball, and they had that little run, and they passed it up, and Scheierman's three legitimately rolled in and right out. So I do think with Scheierman here, it's just kind of his shot is not falling for him, but if those shots are falling, he's going to look as such a more complete player. He was running that pick and roll, kind of pick and pop, not only with the guy in Kenneth Lofton, which I was really liking over there in the second half kind of area around like the mid-range elbows type of stuff, where he was getting some good passes to Lofton, who was cutting to the basket, or helping and finding out other teammates, and was able to strive from the mid-range, which provides me to see that Baylor can be a little bit better on ball than some other players in this Celtics rotation. But it's true, it's key and clear that he has that confidence, he has that energy of wanting to win and keep fighting toward the ends to win, and I do think that he is one of the bigger competitors on the Summer League team, and you can clearly see that with his shot diet as he's trying to take every opportunity he can to try to get into this rhythm here offensively to really help this Celtics team and kind of put them in a mode of their own where they're looking dominant, similar to how the Heat did to end these quarters here, making all of their shots. And then Hugo Gonzalez, as we all know, the guy that has been looking as a pretty solid piece offensively and defensively for the Celtics here in these two previous Summer League games, had probably his weakest performance here in the first half, was seeming to struggle in the first quarter. I believe was 0 for 5 to start off the game here for the Celtics. Was hitting some of his free throws, which was nice, but in the second half is when Hugo started to look a little bit better. Obviously, the on-ball isn't going to be his main priority for the regular Celtics roster. It's mainly for this Summer League team because they're giving him those reps to kind of see what he can be. But I do think he has that kind of position when he's bringing up the ball in that half-court sense, just kind of have that vision to take command as that passer. It just doesn't seem like he has the understanding of how to really run the offense for the Boston Celtics, and I think the kind of familiarity with that is going to take some time with him growing in this system, and then once we see that, maybe he can come better on ball as a playmaker for the Celtics team. But ultimately, as well, he was able to hit some threes for the second Celtics here early in the second half, was once again making some right plays and was running a pretty solid, off-ball role here for the Celtics today as well. So I really liked what he was doing there in the second half. Once again, struggled a little bit, was getting a little bit frustrated, was getting into some foul calls here in the first half, was getting into some arguments with the referees, and that we saw Hugo getting frustrated in game 1, we saw him getting frustrated in game 2, and once again, like I mentioned, I think Brad is really going to bring out the best of him with that frustration and making him turn that frustration into motivation, making him want to get better and become a better player for this team, and striving to kind of fix those little mistakes. And it's only obviously going to take time. And like I mentioned, with Hugo being an on-ball guy with those turnovers, something that a lot of people see with that glaring effort there of him running the point guard position, he's not going to be playing backup point guard for the Boston Celtics, so it does not, at least next year, so it does not matter as much in my opinion. So going back to Baylor as well, I know a lot of people expected the Jordan Walsh sophomore Summer League to look really good. It didn't really look as good as much. His third year has looked really good. Baylor Sharman, kind of same thing here for the Boston Celtics fans, at least in that shooting department. Everything else he's been doing pretty solid, but in the shooting department, a lot of people are kind of going, ooh, that's not really good. But I do think once we see Baylor Sharman kind of get in control of the shot and get into rhythm, like I said earlier, he's going to be very successful for this Celtics team. And then the two other starters here, Max Strus and Charles Bassey. Bassey had a fantastic performance once again, another double-double in the game yesterday. Today, going against Kel'el Ware, a big that, has played some time in the NBA, was looking as a promising young prospect. There was the clear discrepancy of why he's not on a guaranteed contract at this point. I do think, though, that Bassey's clearly better than Summer League. He still had some bright shining moments here in today's game, kind of working down low on the rebound as a rebounder, working in that pick and roll with Max Strus, but in their little pick and roll. But ultimately, I do think he's going to be in that kind of camp where he's going to be competing for that starting job if in this Boston Celtics rotation, if they do keep him with guys like Luka Garza, Namish Queta, Xavier Tillman, Amari Williams, etc., whoever kind of is in that rotation. I don't think it's a clear-cut thing that he's going to be, a major impact player, but I do think it is key that he should be signed and should be given an opportunity to be looked at within this Celtics team, because I do think he can present some good qualities for the Celtics as a rim protector, a shot blocker, and a rebounder here as well. The Max Strus, like I mentioned, the guy who also worked the pick and roll with Charles Bassey here, did not make a shot from the field for the Boston Celtics here, unfortunately, but was able to be very successful here from the free throw, going 6 for 6, and just has the defensive tenacity, aggressiveness. I know a lot of people have talked about this with him being at VCU, and with how aggressive their nature is in the backcourt of, being a relentless defender. And we saw him and Ugo kind of in these rotations, even Baylor Sharman as well, just being these pests, being these guys that are just going to scrape, fight for the ball, be relentless on you, playing as all-ball defenders. And that's something that's kind of engraved in this Celtics culture, and something that I mentioned here in my tweets. Ugo Gonzalez starting to turn up in the fourth quarter, but I've also been impressed with Max Shuga today, as well as his fit with Maine, because I think he's going to be on a two-way contract. I think it's going to be really nice. Obviously, the Celtics losing J.D. Davison, with him being on a guaranteed deal last season. Now they don't really have that point guard, that guy that can really control and run this team for Maine, and I think Shuga is going to be that sure fit-in guy. We've seen him do it with the Summer League, with him being able to run the pick and roll with these bigs. But not only just that, be a perfect, like I mentioned, on-ball defender. I do think the shot needs to kind of get there for him a little bit there to kind of develop into maybe an NBA player, but I do think that for how critical people have been for Brad Stevens on his drafting, because he's had picks 28 and 30 and they haven't turned into bright superstars yet, which is absolutely ridiculous. He's been able to find guys that bring what this Celtics identity is, and that is key. Jordan Walsh, hustle defender, guy who's willing to throw his body on the line, be a switchable guy, hit some open threes out there on the corner. Baylor Sharman, someone who's offensively focused, a guy who's going to control, run that pick and roll, be that offensive microwave and maestro for this Celtics team potentially. And then you look at these past draft picks, Ugo Gonzalez, a crafty off-ball creator who's a great cutter, who can be a solid playmaker potentially, and has all the utmost potential with having all this experience. And not only just to mention how he plays on the court, being so frustrated, a guy that can really buy into that Celtics mentality, and I think Joe Mazzulla is going to really bring out. And then Shuga and Amari Williams both have their specialties. Shuga being that pest, that defensive, scrappy point guard, that guy that's going to be in your face, playing that hard ball, on-ball defense, like a Marcus Smart, Avery Bradley type. And then you look at a guy in Amari Williams, that passing big, something that the Celtics are lost with Luke Cornett, potentially could be losing with Al Horford in free agency. They need that connector. That's such a big, vital part of how the Celtics play basketball, with their ball movement, specifically using their bigs in the post and swinging out to the perimeter and making sure that any opportunity after taking a pass is a good look shot. And I think for the Celtics, having those two kind of guys to kind of potentially swing that role could be very nice. When going back to Amari Williams, when we dive back and look at the Celtics here, he did not play in today's game, similar to how, if on the top of my head, someone did not play yesterday. They kind of just switched roles here for the Boston Celtics. Now, when looking at the bench, Isaiah Wong, a guy that was kind of my MVP for this Summer League for the Celtics team, hasn't really blossomed that much, but, has been playing pretty solid, trying to find his role in the minutes he's had, just hasn't had the shot to fall, but could be a crafty offensive creator for this Celtics team. Jalen Bridges had a bigger game yesterday than he did today off the bench for the Boston Celtics. Wasn't really there in the game for them, minus being a plus 10, kind of giving some solid screens and kind of helping out within the Celtics rotation. Miles Norris, he was obviously shooting the ball a bunch today, 4 for 11 from the field, 2 for 7 from three-point range, but had that 6-0 run to start off the second half to really get that Celtics team in the momentum from cutting the lead down to 13-7 to be like, okay, we can take care of this. And a guy like Miles Norris was able to do that from the three-point range, getting some nice opportunities from the catch and shoot, similar to what we saw in Game 1. He was also driving to the rack, making some nice underneath the basket plays. I do think for this main Celtics team, he's going to be growing as that three-point wing and scorer, and who knows, maybe he could potentially be that for the Boston Celtics down the line and be a filler replacement, but at this point, it's looking like he's going to be a solid swing scorer for the G League team. Kendall Brown, who had some great backdoor cuts, was able to get some nice lobs in there as well, playing as that kind of like smaller, kind of like 4/5 there for the Boston Celtics. I really like what he was able to do for the team today in his low usage role. And then Kenneth Lofton, I tweeted about this as well, but he seemed in Game 1 that he was trying to take the control of this game, playing a little bit of point guard, was slashing through 3 or 4 guys. It just looked a little uncomfortable, right? And I know guys have to play selfishly in the G League, right? Or in the Summer League, excuse me. It makes sense. They're trying to get over to the G League. And for a guy in Kenneth Lofton who had some great success over in China, was trying to come back into the NBA after having, not the best success in the NBA and some vital success in the G League, is obviously trying to impress. And that was clearly made when he was taking command. And even though he went like 0 for 7 or like 1 for 8 from the line, he still finished with a triple-double because he was just driving to the lane, forcefully using his body, and able to get to the free throw line and finish there. But today, we saw a little bit different of a Lofton, in my opinion. He was someone that seemed a little bit more relaxed, right? Maybe he was trying to go for that revenge game versus the Grizzlies, a team that cut him in the past. He wanted to kind of use that as revenge, kind of prove a point, kind of give them a reason to be like, damn, we shouldn't have cut that guy. But in this game here, I saw him actually be pretty as a solid rebounder as well for the Celtics. Like I said, looked more relaxed, but just seemed to be in the right spaces underneath the basket. Once again, his big body just presents himself to kind of be able to box out a little bit easier and just kind of get a rebound and kind of initiate that offense and help the Boston Celtics. But he wasn't getting the rebound and then taking it down the court and trying to score and be all willy-nilly. No, Kenneth Lofton actually played pretty solid. Hit a 3 there for the Boston Celtics. In game 1, he wasn't passing. He'd kind of catch the ball, and even if he caught the ball with 10, 12 seconds left, he was downhill, putting his head down, driving, trying to go score to the basket, trying to make an effort to kind of lift himself up. Today, like I mentioned, we saw him with Baylor Shiren kind of working in that pick and roll. He was getting opportunities. There was one where he rolled to the basket after a nice screen. Baylor gave him a nice little pass. It was a nice, easy little layup. Those are the things I want to see out of Kenneth Lofton. Now, once again, I don't think he's that perfect piece for this Celtics team, but I think for a main Celtics team, one that wants to be competitive, one that wants to be pretty solid, maybe it could be a comfortable role for Kenneth Lofton, kind of being that kind of screen and roller, roll into the basket, getting some nice little layups, potentially striking and hitting some threes, and just being overall a solid big man for the main Celtics. Once again, not going to say he's going to make the regular Celtics team because it is the Summer League still, and we're not going to sell these expectations so highly. But I have been impressed with these guys. Like I mentioned, unfortunately, they did lose today, so going 2-1 now kind of makes it a little difficult to make the semifinals if you're the Boston Celtics. But ultimately, if I am the Boston Celtics, I don't necessarily know if that's what I want. Obviously, it'd be intriguing and nice to see, your team make the semifinals in the Summer League and still be able to continue to play those games. But then it's kind of like an excuse to not really play Baylor and Jordan Walsh in those games, right? And then you kind of run into that, like, do you really want to over-exhaust your veterans and guys that are going to be playing on the roster to win a Summer League championship? Like, I'm sure that the Celtics would love to do it, but ultimately, in my opinion, I don't think that's, like, the biggest need. I don't think we need Jordan Walsh and Baylor Shireman in a Summer League championship to prove that the Celtics are that team. I truly think that us just kind of seeing this growth in between these games and kind of figure out where these players can really stand proves to the Celtics what kind of rotational roles these guys could play, and kind of going into training camp, what other guys they need to call up for training camp to see if they need to compete for spots, if they need to go for two ways, if they need to make other moves on the trade market. Those are all the alignments that I can kind of see happening with this Celtics team in these next couple of days. But once again, unfortunate loss for the Celtics here. We kind of saw a lot of things happen, right? Jordan Walsh get ejected, Baylor Shireman have his kind of best game for the Boston Celtics, kind of taking that lead and control, being that veteran with Jordan Walsh getting ejected in that second half. Hugo Gonzalez, a little bit of a shaky first half, a little bit of a bounce back in the second, but once again, those turnovers, those abilities, he's getting these foul calls. I think that's going to be toned down a little bit with him transitioning into the NBA because he's not going to be playing on ball as much. And I do think his role within the Boston Celtics, we've seen so far, he's looked very impressive. Maybe he gets a little bit more run. We'll have to see what this team does look like. But I do think his minutes are going to be very limited with him competing with guys. And I do think his presence that we see in Summer League is going to be a lot different than what we see on the Boston Celtics, which can kind of temper our expectations of what we can see out of Ugo going into his rookie season. But let me know your thoughts. Like I said, down below in the comment section, what did you guys ultimately think of this Game 3 here? The Celtics have their final game here of the Summer League as of now, going on Thursday night, I do believe. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. What you guys ultimately think will happen with the Celtics in that game. Get a couple days off, and then they'll be officially done. But like I said, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section on what your thoughts are with this Celtics Summer League, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day, and go Boston Celtics. Peace out, everyone.